Hi. Welcome to the University of Arizona School of Journalism's 2024 Zenger Award for Press Freedom Dinner, honoring the BBC's Chief International Correspondent, Lyse Doucet. My name is Fernanda Echavarri, and I'm going to be your MC tonight. I am a 2007 graduate of the University of Arizona Journalism School myself. And I'm currently working as senior producer of podcasts for Futuro Studios out of New York City. I am originally from central Mexico, Querétaro. No, Querétaro, no. Yeah, thank you. And I started my career here in Tucson at the now defunct Tucson Citizen. I see some former colleagues from back in the day in the room. And then I worked for the Arizona Daily Star. And in 2011, And then in 2011, I moved on to work for radio at Arizona Public Media. So for many years, if you drove around and listened to NPR, you definitely heard my voice. And about 10 years ago, I moved to New York to become a producer for NPR's Latino USA. And I worked there for a few years, and then went to write for Mother Jones magazine out of Los Angeles. And a couple of years ago, I came back to Tucson and went back to audio. So I am now working on special podcast series for Futuro Studios. I worked on the first ever dual language podcast limited series that NPR produced called The Last Cup, about Messi, and Messi as in like the GOAT soccer player, and immigration and belonging. And then I also worked with an Apple original podcast that came out earlier this year, also the first ever dual language podcast that Apple put out, called My Devo. And I'm currently working with Amazon's audio powerhouse Wondery on a podcast that I can't say anything about other than it comes out in January. So that's it. Thank you. And it is so wonderful to be living here back in my beloved desert and to see so many people, familiar faces here, and then people I don't know but who support journalism. So before we go any further, I am going to read a message on behalf of the university. We respectfully acknowledge the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the O'odham and the Yaqui. Committed to diversity and inclusion, the university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and indigenous communities through education offerings, partnerships, and community service. And if I may, on a personal note, I would like to add that tonight, in Mexican tradition, it's Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. And when we pay respect to those who have died and remember those who left before us. So I couldn't not mention the tens of thousands of innocent lives of people and children who have been killed in the past year in the grueling war in the Middle East, and all of those who have lost their lives in Gaza, Israel, Lebanon, and the region in conflict, including journalists. So now on to tonight's business. Thank you to the corporate sponsors who helped make tonight's event possible. They are Arizona Media Association and Arizona Local News Foundation, Arizona Public Media, and Ballard Spahr Law Firm. Secondly, I'd like to thank everyone who sponsored a table tonight and who sponsored a School of Journalism student to attend. So yay for all the students who are here tonight and for those of you who helped pay for them to be here. On your tables, you see that you have some note cards. So the idea is that throughout the night and before the Q&A, which will happen after dessert, right? Yes, thank you, Jesse. You will, if you think of a question that you want, you write it on the note card, and then at some point we'll go around and collect them and read as many as we can during the Q&A part of the event. And there's also a QR code on your tables, so if you feel so inclined to donate to the School of Journalism, if you scan that, it'll take you right to that. And now please join me in welcoming to the stage Chris Klein, CEO of our title sponsor, Arizona Media Association and Arizona Local News Foundation.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for making time to be here tonight. I hope, like me, a lot of you have used this as just a chance to reconnect with friends. For those of you in the media sphere, we don't always get an opportunity where we have 250 people together that all have this common passion. And if you haven't had a chance to connect with those folks, I hope you do it before the night gets over. It's also an honor to stand here representing the Arizona Media Association. We're a coalition of about 350 media brands all across the state. And while we're obviously here to celebrate one of the world's great international journalists tonight, I also want to take a moment to recognize all of the local journalists who are in the room with us. Because local journalism plays a critical role to our communities. You all know this, but local journalism is the connector. It's the connector to information, to accountability, and to hope. It's the megaphone that every day helps to make Arizona a better place to live. And it's why journalism is one of the absolute best jobs out there, even though it's also one of the hardest. You all know this, but the economic pressures combined with the challenges around public trust test the industry that is journalism every single day. It's tough. It can be overwhelming. But the difficulties here apply to just about every industry on the planet, and I think that's really helpful to remember. We're all grappling with this acceleration of change and technology, all of us looking for just stability in a world that's moving faster than I think most of us can keep up with. I know political divisiveness makes this challenge feel even tougher, right? Even more acute. We're all thinking, maybe dreading, no matter how you feel, about what next week might bring. But I hope you also remember that we all breathe the same air. We all want our families to be successful. We all want to live in a safe place. And this is precisely why journalism, and in particular local journalism, serves such a critical role, right? It's the coalition of voices focused on keeping Arizona informed, keeping Arizona connected. But I also want to make sure that we all recognize that it's not a solo endeavor. It's a total collective mission. And that mission comes from our diversity as journalists, right? From the large outlets to the small, from print to digital, from radio to TV, and from established media to all of the emerging voices that this new technology is creating in a great state like Arizona. And I want to offer that when we work together, our impact in journalism grows exponentially. And it's why I want to ask all of the local journalists in the room today that over the next year, please lean into collaboration. Because innovation, it's a shared sport. So what does that mean, right? I'm asking you to do 4 things. I'm asking you to look for ways to tell stories in new formats and with more voices. I'm asking you to explore opinions of all shapes and sizes in that reporting. I'm asking you to do something that sometimes your bosses might not like, which is amplify the successes of other people, sometimes competitors, instead of just ignoring them, because we all make each other better. I'm asking you to support the University of Arizona's Journalism School, because that helps shape the future voices of our industry. And perhaps most importantly, I'm asking you to lean into the communities you serve, building personal, human-to-human connections instead of just emails and text messages. That's how we fix the political divisiveness. That's how we build communities. That's what makes local journalism the wonderful thing that so many of us are passionate about. And in that vein, that's what helps us to build the future of Arizona local journalism. So tonight, I know we're going to get inspired by an international journalist that is carrying that mantle for us in ways that few of us can even begin to imagine. And I want to thank you for being here, and for every journalist in the room, no matter what you do, for the important role you serve day in and day out. It is remembered even in the toughest moments, and I personally, as I know so many of us in the room, are grateful for what you do day in and day out. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Chris. Next up, please welcome to the stage Director of the School of Journalism, La Señora Doctora Jessica Retis.
Thank you, Fernanda. Gracias. Buenas noches, good night, welcome, bienvenidos, everyone. Before I share some exciting news and updates about our school, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the incredible team that brought us all together for this event. A special shout out to Jessie Telles, our amazing outreach coordinator. Jessie, please stand up. You have been truly the driving force behind you. Jessie, stand up, please. Thank you so much for your work. Thank you. I also want to recognize our dedicated staff, Mitra Christian, Kelly Copley, Medri Edwards, Madersa Cardenas, Jordan Jean, Maggie Trinkle, Ana Marie Garcia. Please stand up. It takes a ton of hard work to keep our school thriving, and we're really appreciative for everything you've done over the last semester. Thank you. Gracias. We're proud to be an accredited school. That means that our program is evaluated by ACJMC and the University of Arizona Academic Program Review, APR. These committees will visit us in spring 2025. We just finished the first self-report. And then we're working on the second one. I feel like I'm writing a dissertation all over again because it's where we write about what we have done in the last few years. As we wrote in these reports, we are committed to maintaining excellence in education. Our strategic goals are all aimed at fostering innovative teaching methods, enhancing student engagement, and promoting diversity and inclusion within our community. We believe that by investing in our faculty and providing rigorous curriculum, we can prepare our students to meet the demands of a dynamic workforce. Our focus on continuous improvement will ensure that we not only meet, but hopefully exceed the accreditation standards, ultimately enriching the educational experience for all. It has been an honor to serve you as a school director over the past years, making me the only Latina in the country leading a school of journalism with undergrad and grad programs, which is a bittersweet feeling sometimes. But as I embark in the last year of my term, I'm filled with both reflection and anticipation. This role has been an incredible journey, marked by both challenges and remarkable opportunities. With over 3 decades of experience as an educator across multiple universities and countries, I can confidently say that this chapter has been both demanding but also rewarding, very rewarding. I see my students' faces here, and then I see some of them already graduating and doing fantastic jobs over there, somewhere doing good journalism. I'm proud of the strides we have made together and grateful for the growth and insights gained along the way. During my term, we've transformed our teaching approach. We've moved from a print-only focus to embracing the digital age and taking a more holistic view of how we educate the next generation of storytellers. Like many journalism schools nationwide, we've had to adapt to challenges in the field, of course. But we also face important budget challenges here at the university. We're still facing them, to be honest. But despite of all of these, we've launched exciting new programs like the Studies of Global Media and the Bilingual Journalism Master's degree. We also offer a PhD minor in journalism and specialties in science and environmental journalism, digital and broadcast journalism, and global and border journalism. We also offer dual degree options with Latin American Studies, Legal Studies, Middle Eastern and North African Studies, Public Administration, and French Studies, just recently. Additionally, we are in talks with other departments to create even more specialties and dual degrees. In the wake of the pandemic, many of our faculty decided to retire, which made finding the replacement quite challenging. Some of you are here, please stand up, you're here. Thank you so much for your work, and we appreciate what you've done. I know some of you are here. There we go, there we go. We miss you. But we've successfully brought an outstanding new faculty, and we're optimistic about adding even more talent soon, hopefully. Let's take a moment to acknowledge our amazing faculty. Monica Chada, our Director of Grad Studies in researching, he's researching entrepreneurial journalism and the dynamics of digital native news startups. Kendall Blas, our new Director of Undergrad Studies, Associate Director. She brings years of experience as a reporter along the Arizona-Sonora border. Associate Professor Susan Swanberg, a former criminal lawyer and scientist. Her research includes the history of science and environmental journalism, the public understanding of science, and the intersection of law, science, and journalism. Rick Wiley, Assistant Professor of Practice, former Director of Photography at the Arizona Daily Star. He's helping us enhance our photojournalism program. Assistant Professor Si Cheng, a recent PhD graduate from Penn State. Her research focuses on digital journalism and how people engage with news on digital platforms. Assistant Professor Joshua Anderson, recent PhD graduate from UT Austin, is contributing to advancing our science and environmental journalism specialization. Together, we are dedicated to training our exceptional undergrad and grad students. But we're also making strides in student services. Our brand new broadcast and podcast studio are game changers for our courses. A huge thanks to the Severson family, in particular Adelaida Severson, who is here, a great supporter of our program. Thank you so much, Adelaida. You got support. Melody Wagner, I know you're here. Thank you so much for your support. Melody, where are you? I know you're here. Melody, thank you so much for your support, and also to the University of Arizona Provost Investment Fund. Their generous support helped us build our new state-of-the-art facilities, and this is making a change in how we are training our students. These students are already helping us stand out and foster an inclusive learning environment. The school has received generous support throughout these years. To name a few, we want to thank the Jameson Medical Family Scholarship for Public Affairs Reporting and the Harrison Family Endowment for the Harrison Reporting Lab. We're really grateful for their continued support. We're also committed to helping diverse school students join our programs. This past summer, we expanded the Donald Carlson High School Diversity Workshop into a more comprehensive JAMSAT program, which means the students participated in a week-long workshop followed by 5 weeks of summer courses, earning college degrees in just weeks. This initiative is empowering young individuals to navigate the complexities of modern media and make meaningful impact in our society. Last year, we launched the School of Journalism Student Council. Let's give a shout out to current board members, Alejandro Torres, Alexandra Mora, Emma Lapointe, and Grace Gerfood. And Pablo, sorry. They are doing fantastic work for their fellow students, and they are really into it. They just started a survey asking their colleagues, their classmates, what they want to do, and they are already working with me in bringing the student voices into what we need to do in the school. I also would like to take a moment to recognize 2 of the most important vibrant student clubs in our school. Please stand up so we can give you all the recognition you deserve. Women in Journalism Club and the National Association of Hispanic Journalists Student Chapters. Looking ahead, we want our school to be the go-to place for training in digital broadcast and investigative environmental, science, border, global, and bilingual journalism. We're also excited to developing the future certificate programs in podcasting, digital video production, and more. I'm proud to say that our students are landing impressive jobs after graduation, and our alumni are making a real difference out there. We're also seeing current students complete amazing internships. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to the Journalism Advisory Council, particularly to the chair, Michael Chihat, and the vice chair, Jim Kaye. Jim, you're here. I know you're here. Your invaluable guidance has been instrumental during both the easy but also the challenging times we faced over the past few semesters. We're very thankful for the help and support of JAC members, Joe Altman, Jo Mary Barkley, Kathy Bailey Locks, Debbie Bunny, Valerie Cavazos, Mariana Dale, John Diana, Scott Harrelson, Kimberly Kaler, Chris Klein, Pila Martinez, David McCumber, Dan Mitchell, Nate Olivares Hill, Nicole Santa Cruz, Caitlin Smith, David Silver, Mark Woodman, and Betty Golding is also here, and of course, our former JAC chair, our dear Frank Sotomayor. Thank you so much, Frank. As a note to our supporters, we're honoring 14 individuals at the school's Hall of Fame in fall 2025. Stay tuned for that. We couldn't achieve this without each and every one of you, every member of our advisory council, every faculty, staff, campus friends, alumni, and those who share its quality journalism. We're also preparing for our upcoming 75th anniversary soon. Stay tuned for that one also. I really encourage you to support our talented journalism students. Your wisdom, your donations, our planned gifts will help ensure a strong journalism program for years to come. You should find a QR code on your tables. Simply point your cell phone and to access to our donation landing page. On behalf of the faculty and staff, thank you for joining us tonight. Let's enjoy a fantastic evening inspired by our special honoree, Lyse Doucet, who will share insights on journalism that makes real difference. Thank you, muchas gracias.
Thank you, Dr. Ratis. Before our next speaker comes up, I would like to share a few words about the John Peter and Anna Catherine Zenger Award for Press Freedom. The School of Journalism first presented this award 70 years ago, and since 1954 has awarded it almost every year to journalists or media associations who fight for press freedom and champion the right of the people to receive the information they need to self-govern. As the news industry and the world at large continue to rapidly change, the need for a robust free press and an informed public is ongoing and more vital than ever. So tonight we honor the work of a journalist who embodies that very mission. Lyse Doucet, who will be recognized tonight, started as a BBC foreign correspondent in 1983, reporting from North and West Africa, and later from Jordan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, and other areas of South Asia and the Middle East. She became a BBC presenter in 1999, and throughout her career, she has covered humanitarian crises, tsunamis, earthquakes, droughts, famines, numerous wars, and the assassinations of world leaders. In 2002, Lyse was in Kandahar to attend a wedding as an invited guest of a former Afghan president, Hamid Karzai, when gunmen opened fire on his vehicle. Her first-hand account of the attack led to her and her team's nomination for a Royal Television Society Award. She also played a key role in the BBC's coverage of the Arab Spring during the early 2010s, and she was among a team of reporters who won an Emmy in 2014 for their coverage of the Syrian conflict. Fast forward to last fall, when Lyse was originally scheduled to receive this award, the Hamas attack on Israel severely escalated the decades-long conflict in the region, igniting the violent events of the past year. Lyse, with her decades of experience, was called on to do what she has done so many times before, to head into a war zone. Her dedication to serving the public as a journalist during times of crisis and times of division is exactly why we are so proud to have her here with us this evening to accept the Zenger Award. To help us present the award, please welcome to the stage Associate Dean of Research in the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences, Dr. Jane, almost got through it, Dr. Jane Saviska.
Sorry. Yes, hi. I'm honored to present this award on the behalf of the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences, SBS. In addition to serving as Associate Dean for Research, I am a sociology professor, and my research focuses on housing in post-Soviet societies, including Russia and Ukraine. And Ms. Doucet, on a personal note, I'm so grateful for the BBC's coverage of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I can't tell you how much this meant to my colleagues, my family. Thank you. When the war broke out in 2022, I understand that BBC's public funding was seriously at risk. We're familiar with such challenges. And while under this cloud, you went to Ukraine not only to cover the unfolding conflict, but to mentor and support local journalists, producers, and technical staff in Ukraine as they adapted to covering a devastating war that placed their lives at risk. Russia is threatening not only Ukrainians' physical security and sovereignty, but their freedom of expression, as Russia seeks to muzzle Ukrainians just as it has its own press. Thank you for helping to shine the light of a free press on this ongoing war. That work is just one illustration, many others were just mentioned, of how your work aligns with the Zenger Award's purpose and also our college's mission. SBS's vision statement is simply a just world together. Our mission is to investigate ideas, transform social conditions, and tell unheard stories. And we do this by preparing students, engaging in research, and collaborating with community partners in our Borderlands region and across the world. In an interview with The Guardian in 2015, you said, "I look at wars as relationships among people, relationships between neighbors, friends, mothers and fathers and children. Wars as relationships among people. That sounds like sociology to me." You also said, "I'm a big believer in the small story telling the big story." And many faculty in our college use storytelling as a vehicle to understand society, including our School of Journalism and also anthropology, English, global studies, and more. And we're especially proud of our community-engaged research that works with rather than on people to understand their experiences. This is what you do so effectively as a journalist. We also share a belief in the transformative power of education. In an interview with Prospect Magazine, you were asked, if you were to give £1 million to spend on other people, what would you spend it on and why? And you responded, education. It's the door to a better future. It made all the difference in my life, and I've seen it change the lives of so many others, and seen so many lives blighted by not going to school. So thank you for supporting education at the University of Arizona by giving your valuable time to us and visiting us. Thanks also to the many supporters of the School of Journalism and SBS who make this award possible and are here tonight. I'm so pleased to present you with the John Peter and Anna Catherine Zenger Award for Press Freedom. Could you please come forward?
Thank you so much. To you, to Fernanda, to you, to all of you. Mil gracias. Such a wonderful award, such a wonderful honor, a wonderful evening, and a wonderful community. To the staff, to the scholars, to the students, to the supporters of the University of Arizona School of Journalism. It's such a huge honor for me to be welcomed into your family. And I often joke, it's not really a joke, that journalism is an excuse for bad manners. And in my case, it wasn't that I was a few minutes late tonight, a few hours late, delayed by a few days. It took me a whole year to get here. And so when I arrived tonight, I was sort of thinking, oh, are people going to say, and everyone was so kind when I came here. They didn't say, what took you so long? And there was one person kind of hovering around when I was here at the table, and someone, she obviously wanted to speak to me. So I turned around and I said, hello, and, who are you? She says, my name is Kim. I'm head of catering. I said, oh, she goes, we've been waiting for you for 1 year. And then I was thinking, oh my God, have the chicken and the beef been waiting for me for 1 year? But I can say for all of us that we know that the chicken and beef have not been waiting for 1 year. It was really good. And when I finally arrived at Tucson Airport, there she was, Dr. Jessica Rettis, with her wonderful husband, Carlos, waiting for me with her huge hug, the hug that she had been waiting to give me for a year. And then when I came to the School of Journalism, I was given this big collective hug, and it felt so good. Muchas gracias. But, that whole year of waiting, that gave that wonderful outreach coordinator, Jessie Tellez, 365 more days to add more meetings to my itinerary. On October the 11th last year, when I was in southern Israel, right on the Gaza border, I received a message on WhatsApp from Dr. Rettis. And that, of course, was just a few days after the horrific events, the Hamas attacks of October the 7th. And I was touched beyond measure to get the message, which came all the way from Tucson, which I had understood had come after the School of Journalism. The staff, the teachers came together to discuss what should they do about the award. And Jessica sent me this message, and she said, we understand you are right where you need to be right now. And I was so profoundly grateful. But even more, I understood that at the School of Journalism, they had this profound understanding about the essence of journalism and what really matters. And that is to be on the ground, to be there when something was happening. And there I was on the Gaza border with smoke rising behind us in Gaza and the missiles landing in the communities of southern Israel around us. And your message arrived, and I felt that our worlds and our hearts were joined. I love small worlds, and I love surprises. And so when I finally made it to Tucson, who do I meet? But Monica Chadha, who I worked with in 2006 in Mumbai during the Mumbai train bombings, when Monica used to work for the BBC's India Bureau, and now, of course, she's the director of the graduate program. And yesterday, reminiscing about all the old technology with Rick Wiley, who is the assistant professor of practice, I mentioned that first generation of computers so long ago in the early 80s. I don't know whether anyone here will admit, does anyone remember the Tandy computers from Radio Shack? Come on, who used them? Who used them? See, there you go. And when Rick and I mean, the students with us thought this was like ancient history. But when Rick and I were talking about it, I had in my mind, I was thinking back to those days when I was a young 20-something journalist beginning my life, which became my lifetime of journalism. This was in West Africa. And I was remembering the brilliant American journalist who first showed me the Tandy and how to work the Tandy. And this morning, coincidentally, I woke up and I received an email from that American journalist. And his name is Mort Rosenblum. And I received, there it was in my computer, not a Tandy, that he was coming to Tucson. And I thought, why is Mort coming to Tucson? And then, of course, I looked, and there it was. He's a University of Arizona graduate, and as many of you will know, he was part of your 2018, your inaugural Hall of Fame. And I'm thinking, hashtag love small worlds. But, you know, in this wonderful small world of journalism, we also have to do what journalists do. We have to ask some uncomfortable questions. And so, good people of Tucson, I've been asking myself, what if Anna Catherine Zenger was here tonight, the wife of John Peter Zenger? What if she was sitting here at the head table? And it would be a night when her husband, John Peter, would be in jail in New York, jailed on accusations of seditious libel. And she so courageously kept publishing their newspaper, the New York Weekly Journal, despite efforts in 1734 for the authorities of the time, the British colonial authorities, to stop them from publishing. What if Anna Catherine was sitting at that table? What if she was with us here tonight? She'd say, "Caray, you're giving the Zenger Award to someone from the British Broadcasting Corporation?" And I would say, Anna Catherine, I'm Canadian. And my ancestry is Acadian, the Cajuns of Louisiana. And my people suffered so terribly at the hands of the British. We used to have this program on the BBC before the days of email and the internet, where people would send in their questions by letters to ask about the correspondence and the programs of the BBC. And the BBC then used to get a lot of letters about, what about this non-British accent? This very strange accent on the BBC, and where did it come from? So I would have to appear in this program every few years. And every time I did it, I got more and more brave. So the last time I did it, when they said to me, well, you know, how did you end up working for the BBC? I said, well, working for the BBC is my Acadian revenge. They did the British colonizers, they didn't give us our land back, but they gave me a job. And then I got these letters from Acadians around the world, and one of them said, Lyse Doucet, bravo, vous êtes la Céline Dion du journalisme. Which in English means, well done, Lyse Doucet, you're the Céline Dion of journalism. And I thought, oh la la. But the Zenger story, what an extraordinary story. It goes back nearly 300 years, and yet it is still a story of our time. A story of how the authorities tried to shut down a local paper. Sound familiar? And a story, incredibly, a story of a woman journalist, Anna Catherine, who kept publishing. The story of a woman before her time. And I always say in journalism, and I've said it in the past 48 hours and all the meetings that Jesse set up for me, that in journalism, everything has changed, but nothing has changed. Mort Rosenblum's Tandy computer, which could only do, let's be honest, the most simplest of functions, is now the phone that we have in our pocket that can do almost everything we want that phone to do. The technology that we use as journalists, that we all use in our everyday lives, has changed beyond our wildest imaginations. But the drive and the determination, the courage and the conviction of journalists, of the Zenger family, is still 3 centuries on, is still what drives us today. And today, in 2024, I don't need to tell any of you here tonight, that battle for press freedom, for the right to know, is now in so many countries, too many countries, a battle which is nothing less than life and death. I arrived in Tucson on Wednesday night. And on that same day, across the border, so not so far away, in Mexico, Patricia Ramirez, an entertainment correspondent, was shot dead in a restaurant she owned in her city in the west of Mexico. And on the day before, on Tuesday, when I was doing my online check-in, a host on a Mexican radio program, who also writes for the website Minuto por Minuto, Mauricio Cruz Soles, had just finished interviewing the mayor on the street, and he was shot dead. And sadly, here tonight, we can say with almost 100% certainty that those people who murdered Patricia and Mauricio will never be found. They'll never be brought to justice because Mexico, as many of you know, has one of the highest incidences of unresolved murders. And not one case, not a single case of a disappeared journalist has ever resulted in a conviction. You don't need me to tell you that Mexico is now one of the most dangerous places in the world to be a journalist. At a time in which we live, in which it has never been more dangerous in so many places to be a journalist, that if you read any of the media watchdogs, that journalists are being killed and kidnapped and put in prison and harassed and abused in much higher numbers than ever before. We lose our colleagues, we lose our friends, and we lose our dear friends. In 2012, a dear friend, an American journalist, Marie Colvin, was killed, murdered, when she was on assignment in the Syrian city of Homs, when she was hit by artillery fire after she got smuggled in to Syria with the rebels, the democracy activists, because she wanted to tell the story about how innocent people, women and children sheltering against the fire, the gunfire of the Syrian authorities were causing so much death and suffering. In her case, there was a US court case which found the Syrian government responsible for her death. But sadly, there will never be justice for her death. And just a few days before Marie Colvin was killed in Syria, another American journalist, an Arab American journalist who we saw as the best journalist of our generation, Anthony Shadid, he also died in Syria. He too had to go in with smugglers. And when he came out on horseback, and he had asthma, and he died on the way out of Syria. And just days before he had gone into Syria, which was his last trip into Syria, he had done an interview with NPR in which he said, "Wow, it's such an amazing time to be a journalist." And he said that there are stories in Syria, the kind of stories we're seeing in Syria now. Those are stories that are worth taking risks for. Worth taking risks for. There is a mantra in journalism, which is perhaps as old as journalism itself, which says that no story is worth dying for. None of them. But we do say now that there are stories worth taking risks for. But the danger in our time, as Anthony and also Marie and also Patricia and Maurizio found out, the risks are so great, you don't know about them until it is too late. And the night before Marie Colvin was killed in Syria, she had dinner with another friend of ours in the Lebanese capital, Beirut. And this other friend, Lindsay, said, "It's too dangerous, Marie. You shouldn't be going into Syria with the smugglers." And she said, "That is above my threshold of danger. And Marie Colvin looked at this friend, Lindsay, and without a moment's hesitation, she said, "It is what we do. It is what we do as journalists." Journalism. It's not just about wars and going to those kind of dangerous places so far away. It's also about the time that all of us here tonight, all of us, every single one of us here tonight, find ourselves in. A time where we are fighting for our democracies, where we are fighting for accountability. And you know, while I am really sorry, profoundly sorry, that I didn't come here last year, I'm really glad to be here this year, at a time where I don't need to tell any of you, where we're in Arizona, one of the most consequential battlegrounds of the US election, just days away, what is called a swing state. And we're not so far from the border, from migration. And again, I don't need to tell any of you, is one of the big issues in your elections, and also in elections in so many parts of the world, including in Britain, where I now live. Journalism is also about what Danielle at AZPM, when I met her this morning, one of your experts, one of America's experts on border and migration. That's what journalism is about too. And I understand some of the journalists, perhaps some who are here tonight, will be watching those ballot boxes on election night to make sure that nothing goes wrong. And there are journalists here tonight who have been setting up their own media, their own startups, like the Tucson Spotlight, because they believe that journalism is also about the right to know what's happening way over there, but what's happening right here, what's happening in your own communities. All of this is the journalism that we are fighting for. And so we are reminded again tonight, as you have done for the last 70 years with the Zenger Award, just how much freedom of the press, the importance of the right to know matters to all of us. It is what we do. And to do it, it does take courage. It takes courage to be a journalist in our time. And when I spoke to the students in Dr. Kendall's class, I said to them, you know, courage doesn't necessarily have to mean going to war zones and going to the other side of the world. If you're a student of journalism or a journalist just starting out, or like a journalist like me who's been doing it for a long time, there's also an everyday kind of courage. The courage to get up in the morning and to send that email about a job, the courage to confront someone about the story that you're doing, the courage to take on some of the most difficult issues of our time. That also takes a lot of courage. And there's also the courage to travel. And you don't have to travel way on the other side of the world. It can be courage to cross the street, cross the city, cross your province, cross the country. The courage to find within yourself as a journalist to say, I can do this, I can do it. And when I met the journalist in Kendall's class and they said, I don't know whether I want to be a journalist, we all were reminded, it's hard. It's hard now to get a job. It's hard now to take on the power of big tech, even TikTok. It's hard to get public officials to take your questions. It's hard even when people are turning away from the news. And all of this you may have seen was documented in a report of Reporters Without Borders, Journalistes Sans Frontières. They came to the swing states, including to Arizona, and looked at the press freedom in your own state of Arizona. And for all of the reasons I mentioned, they said it's getting harder. So we understand. But whether the journalists who are studying journalism, whether you do go on, and I hope you do, to take this rocky path of journalism, or whether you just use the skills that you're learning about in the School of Journalism, we can't give up. We can't give up on press freedom. We can't give up on the right to know, because if we do, we're giving up on ourselves. We're giving up on our commitment to the kind of society we want to live in. We're giving up on protecting the values and the freedoms that we so cherish in living in a democracy as we do, in a democracy in a world where some 75% of countries see journalism either fully or partially blocked. So good people of Tucson, with all of these problems and more that I said, what do we do? What do we do? You know the answer better than I do. You bear down. You bear down, we bear down. We focus. We focus with all of our strength. We use all of our strength to do what Anna Catherine and John Peter Zenger did nearly 3 centuries ago. It's what they did, it's what we do, it's what we all do. Thank you.
I don't even know what to say. That was so inspiring. That was so beautiful. That was so, I just feel so honored. I think we are all so honored to be in your presence tonight. And thank you so much. Thank you. That was inspiring, and yeah, all the words. It was all the words. Thank you again.
Good evening, everyone. We will get a quick head start on the Q&As, and then we want to open it up to the audience so that you can also ask the questions that you had in mind for Lyse. Lyse, so good to see you.
Nice to see you again. You haven't changed a bit since 2006.
Only a little bit older. All right, so when you heard you got the Zenger Award, usually you're used to reporting stories, but you kind of became the story. What went through your mind?
You mean when I didn't show up?
Or when you heard and you didn't show up and then you showed up?
I didn't like becoming the story because I didn't show up, so that wasn't good. But I felt I wasn't necessarily the story. I think what Zenger stood for was the story, that the award is a way to focus on press freedom, the right to know. So I felt it was an opportunity to highlight something which is important to all of us.
Now, when you started as a foreign correspondent, you reported from West Africa, Pakistan, Afghanistan in the 1980s, but you were blocked in a variety of ways by a variety of BBC correspondents at various stages in your career. But you kind of managed to sidestep that, not only with good humor and good manners, but also just, a tremendous amount of resilience. Where does that come from?
So this is something that I've told the students that I had the honor and the pleasure of meeting in the School of Journalism, is if I had one piece of advice for them, is never take no for an answer, especially not now when you're starting out and where you still have this gift of, her husband is telling her.
Hold the mic closer. Usually he's telling me to turn it off.
Okay. So that they shouldn't give up on their dreams, because even though I stand before you tonight and they'll say, oh wow, look at that Lyse Doucet. She's had a successful career, but it's never it's never a straight line from A to B. And along the way, You have to. You stumble, you fall, and you have to get yourself back up again. And so yes, there was people saying you've got the wrong accent, you're not the right fit, or I want your job, or why are you doing my job? And people, unfortunately, I have to say, and I told the students, that when I first met journalists, and in my case it was in West Africa, I was shocked by what terrible people the journalists were. I mean, they were great people, but journalism can bring out the worst in people. Competitive, backstabbing, vain. But I don't think it has to be that way. And I, make a point. I'm not trying to take the moral high ground. I'm just saying it can work just as well not to be backstabbing, not to be competitive, not to be a terrible person. So I try not to. I haven't quite succeeded, but I'm trying.
So you're in the US at a crucial time. The country is electing a new leader next week. You wrote a piece about it on the BBC News website. You spoke to several leaders and got their points of view on what they're thinking about the elections. What did you hear from them that you did not write in your piece? What are they looking for, or afraid of, or anticipating?
Monica, you have put me in a really difficult position because, I'm sure there are a few people connected to the forces of the law here, and I could be charged with electoral interference if I say something, and I won't be able to get back on that plane to... I always joke, and it isn't completely a joke, that all of us should be voting in your elections, including me, a Canadian, because around the world, everyone is on tenterhooks about what you guys are going to do, who you're going to vote for, because it doesn't, of course it affects you most of all, because this is your country, but whoever leads your country will have their leadership, what they bring to bear, what they bring into the White House, their policies will have great consequences for so many people in all too many places. And it's a great gift that you live in such a powerful country. But it's also a responsibility that we want you to vote well, because we are worried about how you're going to vote.
Well, with that, I'm going to end this Q&A, and then I've got a couple of questions from audience members. And the first one is, what have been the most challenging experiences facing you in covering the war in Gaza?
Ooh. Isn't it? I thought we're supposed to leave now, aren't we? At our time. I was saying to the journalism school students that 'twas ever thus that journalism schools, for so long and to this day, they teach the basics, the 5 W's, the who, where, what, when, why. And it's my comment about how everything has changed is nothing has changed. That the Gaza war, like every war, is also about finding out what happened. The who, where, what, when, why. But the reason why it makes so difficult is that there is not even agreement on the who, where, what, when, why. And I always say that when it comes to particularly wars and conflicts, that there is what happens on the ground, the facts, what happened. But above that, every war, every conflict also is played out in the narrative of what happened, the perception of what happened, what you think happened or is happening, what I think or what someone else thinks, and that the perception of what has happened or is happening can be more consequential and more powerful in fueling the conflict than what is actually happening on the ground. And so in this case, it's in all wars, but it's especially pronounced now because this is a war which reaches far and wide, is that people have very different narratives of what is happening in Gaza, what is happening in Israel, what is happening in Lebanon, what is happening in the regions all around. And this is a war which is unprecedented. I kept using this word so much I almost had to start apologizing on the BBC That day in, day out, I was saying, well, this is unprecedented. This is unprecedented. What happened on October the 7th? Unprecedented number of Israelis killed. Unprecedented number of Israelis taken hostage. Unprecedented suffering, the shock of Israelis as to what happened. But every day since then, and it has been more than a year, unprecedented suffering of the Palestinians of Gaza. Never has there been so much devastation, desperation. One after another, the aid chiefs of the world, decades of experience, have gone into Gaza and said, I knew it was going to be bad, but I never expected that it would be this bad. And we have to be able to say that what happened on October the 7th was terrible. But a lot of terrible things have also happened since then. We have to recognize both the suffering of the Israelis, the suffering of the Palestinians, of the Lebanese, the people in the region. So many civilians are suffering because of this war. And it's our job of journalists is to tell it from all sides. It's hard to tell it because it is such an emotional, such a painful moment, but also because it is also playing out on social media. So as journalists, the trolling, the abuse, the threats are also unprecedented.
So that segues nicely into the next question. Trying to provide information about war zones and conflict to people who haven't experienced it is hard. How has your approach to giving information about conflict and war shifted as you gained experience?
Well, we heard into that sort of lovely introduction tonight is I've always said that every war, every disaster, every major crisis of our time, no matter how complex, no matter how complicated or consequential, if you drill down into the essence of that story, what is it about? It's a human story. It's a story about fathers and mothers and children and families and streets and neighborhoods and cities and countries. They are stories that we should all be able to understand. And I often tend to see my work as trying to narrow the gap so that we don't think, oh, those countries or those people or, you know, they're always killing themselves. No, they are people just like you and I who want to get up in the morning, see their children go to school safely, come home safely, want a job that is meaningful, want a life worth living. And that should not be difficult for any of us to understand. And that is especially the case in war zones. All people want is a normal life.
The violent attacks on journalists in Mexico, Gaza, and elsewhere are shocking. What about the more subtle efforts to suppress and marginalize independent journalism carried out by Silicon Valley billionaires, such as Elon Musk, political campaigns such as Donald Trump's, and other powerful people's manipulation and manipulative efforts?
All of these battles, they begin right at home. Any of you who follow the media watchdogs, like Reporters Without Borders, their report this year, the United States went from being number 45 out of 180 countries. It sunk down to 55 in a year because of the violations against the press, because of some of the issues you mentioned about how the economic pressures on journalism, on journalists, the way so many newspapers were closing, the way big people with money were controlling the media, the threats from big tech. For all of those reasons, even in the United States of America, the press freedom was diminishing. It's not as bad, of course, as in Ukraine or Mexico. Journalists are not dying, but the pressures on journalists and journalism is increasing, which is why I say we must live with gratitude for the gifts that we have. But these are not gifts that can be taken for granted by any of us.
The conflict in the Middle East has been something that a lot of people, university students especially, have had a hard time talking about. How do you report amidst contention? For example, often when showing support for Palestine, people get called anti-Semitic. How do you recommend reporting the truth when there's so much division?
We just have to report it as it is. You know, the who, what, when, where, why. It's hard to get at the truth, and the truth is controversial. And the truth is, everyone has their own truth. And yes, truth has been weaponized. Information is being weaponized. The tools of our trade are being turned against us. And this, yes, this is having an impact all the way to the campuses of universities across the United States, in Canada, in universities across Europe. And it should, because it should matter. But we should also be able to respect other points of view, to respect other people's sense of self, their worries. They should be able to express their views in safety. So it's one of what we call in journalism, and I think in scholarship too, it is a defining moment, an inflection point. And I think this will live long in the history. I say to people now, what do you think 10 years from now, 20 years from now, when we look back, what will we say to each other? What did you do during that time? What did you say about what was happening in Gaza? What did you say about what was happening in Lebanon? How did we act in that time? How did we tell the truth of what was happening in that time? These are questions for all of us.
And the last one, can you please tell us more about your Acadian heritage and how it shaped you?
Because I've had the privilege and the good fortune to spend my time in many places of the world where, for better or worse, history is not something in the past. You know, to quote Faulkner, the past is not dead, it's not yet past. So in the Middle East and South Asia, and often in places which are former colonies, maybe it is in South America as well, people's history is like one of Canada's best novelists, Robertson Davies, said, it's bred in the bone. It's still part of who we are. And as I went from working in West Africa, then working in Pakistan, in Iran, in the Middle East, people used to always come up to me thinking because I work for the BBC, I must be British. Oh, you British, Balfour Declaration, Sykes-Picot. And then I said, no, I'm not British. And then I thought, okay, you know a lot about your history. Then I started looking at my own history, such that when people came up to me and said, oh, you work for the British Broadcasting, Balfour Declaration, Sykes-Picot, and I would say, excuse me, my people were suffering at the hands of the British before you even knew you had a homeland. And so I think it's really, and I think, now we're in the United States, I think this is something that people do know. They're very proud of where they come from, their ancestry. People feel very connected to who they were. You know, everyone I've met here, I've asked them for their last name, and I've had to say, I'm asking you your last name because as a Canadian, I'm really interested. Where did you come from? What's bred in your bone? What makes up who you are? And I think that's what has come. And I'm very proud of the history of the Acadians. Also, I have to say one last thing is that I realized, especially in the English language world, people would come up to me, in Britain, what they say, oh, hello, where are you from? And then you tell them and they go, no, wait, where are you originally from? And it's always loaded. So then I would say, well, I'm Canadian. And then I would say, well, actually, I'm Acadian. And they go, Acadian? And then I would say, Acadian, do you people of, Eastern Canada expelled by the British? Mm-hmm. Longfellow's poem, do you know Longfellow, Evangeline? Louisiana, the Cajuns? Oh, Cajun cooking. Oh, and I'm thinking, my Acadian ancestry, the great, courageous, proud people of Acadia, it comes down to jambalaya, rice in Louisiana. So I thought I have to know more about my own ancestry because it's a story of survival. A people which was squeezed between the French and the British colonial powers. who were expelled from the eastern seaboard of Canada because they refused to swear an oath of allegiance to the British. They were scattered across Louisiana, Boston, the 13 colonies, and then they came back. They were allowed to come back. And now a people that the British, it is regarded by lawyers as the first case of ethnic cleansing by the British, although the British would not say that. And when you go to Acadia today, there's an Acadian flag, there's an Acadian anthem, there's an Acadian National Day, 15 août, and there's everything short of a state. And I think, wow, what an amazing story of survival, of a people who, against all the odds, came home and rebuilt that sort of sense, that spirit of Acadia. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it. Thank you to all of you. Thank you. I know you waited a year, but and I hope it wasn't. I hope I didn't disappoint you or angered you by not being here. Or you thought, oh, those journalists are so rude. She didn't even show up for dinner. Here I am waiting for my chicken or beef, and she's not even here. So thank you very, very much. And I've had a lovely time. My 48 hours here in Tucson. I've been delighted by it, and I won't ask to be invited again, but who knows? Maybe they might invite me again.
Thank you, Lyse.
I'm not going to get back on the podium, but that's it for tonight. Thank you so much, Dr. Monica Chada, and the one, the only Lyse Doucet. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.